because you had the pleasure of obviously interviewing him and chatting to the man himself, the Roma icon, the Roma legend, to the Italian legend, Francesco Totti. How amazing was that? And you love talking to him and Buffon, I know.
Well, this is my first time talking to Totti, and I have spoken to Buffon quite a few times. I've been very, very fortunate to have a good relationship with Buffon. But Totti is not someone who gives a lot of interviews. He talks about this. The reason that I was able to talk to him on this occasion stems in part from the fact that he's got an English translation of his autobiography. I would say no one is paying me to say this. Like, no one is leveraging me to say this. I've already done the interview. It's a really good football autobiography. It's co-authored by Paolo Condo, who's a great writer. It's been translated well into English. If you want like an interesting player's biography, I mean, of course, Totti is an interesting character because of the career he's had, but it's a good book. It's got some fantastic stories in it. You heard when I think on the last podcast, the one before, I mentioned about Luciano Spalletti running naked down corridors. There's some things in this book. Okay, so I recommend it. But he's not someone who gives a lot of interviews, and so it was a real treat to get this opportunity to sit with him and chat. I have only one regret with it, which is because of the times we're in, it was a Zoom interview rather than a face-to-face interview, and I think you lose something in that dynamic. It's obviously 100 times better than doing it on the phone or something like that. So it's still great that we have this technology, but being in a room with someone is still different. You understand someone differently when you're physically in their presence, I think. But he's such an interesting character. He's got, I think, undoubtedly some sadness in him still, even though he won't name it that, about how his career came to an end at Roma, about how he felt like that last chapter didn't go the way he wanted it to. And I think it's such a contrasting dynamic between he's got absolutely deserved, justified pride in being this bandiera, the guy who stayed at Roma for 25 years. And it's a quarter of, I mean, can you imagine doing anything for 25 years, Mina? Like, literally anything. It's a quarter of a century.
I mean, this is my fear of getting into a marriage for 25 years, let alone like a job.
Are you kidding? Yeah. And I think it's just there's this bit within him which I'm not the first person to have this conversation with him. He's obviously talked about Madrid a few times recently, but I think he has got some. He's got some. I don't know if regret is the right word, but some feeling of what if still in him, even if he doesn't like to say it, about Madrid and what might have happened if he'd gone there. But he's also got this this really interesting take on destiny and like this sort of belief that, you know, you make choices with your own mind, your own heart, and destiny will take you where you're supposed to go in life. And that's what he uses to rationalize all that out. I just thought it was really interesting that as he explained all that, I was like, hang on a second, because I've spoken with Buffon has said almost word for word, like these things to me. And the two of them clearly, they've been best mates since they were 14 years old. Not best mates right away, but they've become really close friends since they were 14 years old playing for Italy. And in some sense, they have a shared way of viewing the world. And I guess that way of viewing the world must work out pretty well, because between them, they've won quite a lot.
Yeah, they really have. I feel like Totti, I mean, obviously I'm a Juventus supporter and everyone thinks that Del Piero is very much one of the main reasons why I supported them. But I was always somebody who thought Totti was perhaps the better player between the two. If I had to, maybe various, injuries in '98 for Del Piero sort of robbed him of the chance to really live up to what I think he could have been. But with Totti, I always feel like there are things that it's amazing, because as an icon, as somebody, who sometimes I thought, watching him, he a little bit like Ronaldo. Sometimes he can be controversial. Sometimes he cannot be always so, maybe because he was so beloved. I don't know, But then when I read these interviews, the one that he had with you, the one that he had when he spoke about, not being able to sort of know what to do with yourself when you leave something. And, we talked a lot about footballers. Some of them just love that, it's a great job and it pays and it's, they have fun doing it. But there's people who just genuinely love the game and love the club. And I think that when you read that, it's very difficult, because I always sort of joke about Totti, like always needing to mention he was wanted by Real Madrid or all these things. But he is somebody who I can honestly say loved the sport more than I think anyone, Yeah. And you just love reading about, you still think of him as a little boy who's just fascinated by it all. And I think that you captured that pretty well.
Thank you. And I totally agree with you. I think he is still, he's a by his own description, quite a simple character. And I think his love for football is so sincere. I think you get that comes out in the book when he talks about when he was playing with Cassano and just how much fun he had playing with Cassano, even though Cassano's life, went a different direction. And actually another area where maybe he has some regret that Cassano couldn't keep it together well enough for those two to become a partnership that they could have become. Look, Francesco Totti, in my opinion, is, even now, extraordinary as this is to say about someone who's clearly very well thought of in football. I think people who didn't watch him live underestimate quite how good he was. I think in this age of I don't know, social media and everyone bragging about who's won the most trophies, who scored the most goals. If you didn't sit and watch him for 90 minutes, during a game, you won't get it, because he doesn't have the most trophies and he doesn't have the most goals, but he was really something else. And I think, I just think it's, absolutely. And it's just one of the greatest privileges of the job that we do, getting to sit and talk to people like that sometimes and try to understand what makes them tick. I hope the interview did some of that. And honestly, even from that interview, I have several thousand words of transcript that couldn't make it into that interview because of word count. So maybe there'll be even more to come out somewhere down the line. We'll see.
You know what? I loved reading Andrea Pirlo's autobiographies. So now I'm obsessed with now trying to read this one as well. Because I laughed so much when I was reading Pirlo's book. I laughed so much, especially when he talks about Gattuso. So I definitely want to see because I didn't read Totti's. So this should be really interesting for us.
It's out under the title Gladiator in English. I just want to say this last anecdote on Totti, then we'll shut up about this, because I forgot to put this in the interview, but I forgot. I ran out of words for this in the interview. It's actually in the book. The book is called Gladiator. And he talks about, in the build up to the Scudetto, which he won at Roma, just the one Scudetto, of course, which he, by the way, describes still as, to him, more meaningful than winning the World Cup with Italy. That's, his feeling about it.
Wow.
He was watching the movie Gladiator, the Russell Crowe movie, every night of the week in his basement with friends, to the point that he learned it all off by heart. And I just love that image. These superstar footballers can still be, you talked about a kid, they can still be the cheesiest, most sentimental kids. This is Rome. Rome is being a gladiator. We're going to go out there and play football. And I love it. It's sweet and also quite, revealing about who he is as a person all at the same time, I think.
You know what? It is having the privilege of doing this job. I remember speaking to Luis Garcia Plaza, who was La Liga coach at Levante at the time, and he was talking about how to spur people on and how to, and it's so funny when you're talking about Gladiator, because he used movies a lot, and I do think movies really managed to inspire and to make players want to go so far. When they were talking about how Di Matteo managed to win Chelsea the Champions League, he said that what he did was make a family movie for each player before that huge match. And obviously it's not like, Chelsea won, because they played spectacular football, but because perhaps they wanted it more than anything else, And I do think that it's amazing how much watching something on screen, whether it's your family, whether it's a great movie that makes you feel patriotic or makes you really bonded with the city that you're from, makes a huge difference. But definitely read that in The Guardian. I'm sure there'll be a link below as well. So please, if you haven't
It's
already,
pinned on
then
my
definitely
Twitter.
do so. It's pinned on her Twitter. There we go. That's all you need to know.